You don't remember when it started, do you? Not exactly. It wasn't a single moment, not a breakup, not a failure. It was slower. Like fog drifting through the cracks of your soul, at first just a weight behind your ribs, a quiet disinterest, a silence that stretched longer than it should. Then, one day, the things that once lit you up felt distant, like memories from someone else's life. People spoke, and you smiled. But something in you was vanishing. You called it depression. That's the name they gave it. But what if they were wrong? What if this isn't your end? What if it's your beginning? Carl Jung, one of the greatest minds to ever map the soul, spent 6 years spiraling into this same darkness. But he didn't call it a breakdown. He called it a descent into the deepest layers of the self. And what he brought back from that abyss wasn't insanity. It was revelation. He recorded it in a book, the Red Book. A book filled with visions, madness, gods, shadows. A book he hid from the world until long after his death. Because it wasn't for them. It was for you. You who feel like you're fading. You who wonder if this numbness is the new normal. Let me be clear. This is not some spiritual cliché. This isn't toxic positivity. This is soul work. And right now you feel hollow, don't you? You wake up tired. You go through the motions. Your goals feel lifeless. You cry in the dark and wear a smile like armor. But here's what Jung uncovered. Depression is not always a malfunction. Sometimes it's the soul saying, I'm done pretending. You're not broken. You're being summoned. Pulled inward, dragged into the underworld of your own unconscious. And just like Jung, you're not meant to avoid this chaos. You're meant to move through it. Not to escape it, but to be remade by it. See, the Red Book wasn't a diary. It was a map, a record of what happens when someone stops performing and starts listening to the storm inside. Jung called it his confrontation with the unconscious. He saw images, heard voices. He met gods and demons inside himself. And it shattered the man he thought he was. But what he found wasn't insanity. It was truth. It was meaning. So now I'll ask you the question that sits at the heart of this descent. What if the reason you feel numb is because the version of you you've been performing has nothing left to say? What if your depression isn't a chemical imbalance, but a soul imbalance? What if the life you've built, the titles you wear, the roles you play, were never really yours? And now the mask is crumbling, and your soul refuses to keep pretending. This isn't dysfunction, it's rebellion, a sacred mutiny. Jung once said, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. But not you. Because if you're hearing these words, you're already on the path. The pain isn't random. It's a message. Your depression is trying to reveal something. Not just about your wounds, but about the false self you've been addicted to. Let me give you an image Jung would have understood. You're in a house. Each room is filled with noise, people, roles, and expectations. You've laughed there, smiled, played along, but now you've stepped into the basement. It's dim, cold, and for the first time, you're alone. This is the place most people flee. They run upstairs, back to the noise, back to the roles, back to the illusion of control. But if you stay here, if you sit in the dark long enough, you'll hear something, not from outside, but from deep within. A whisper, a voice, and it says, I've been waiting for you. That voice? That's your real self. The one you abandoned to fit in, the one who never wanted to be perfect, just whole. Jung didn't run back upstairs, he stayed. He sat in the darkness, and he spoke to the chaos. Not to fix it, but to understand it. And through confusion, fear, and madness, he listened, and he found his soul. So what does this mean for you? It means maybe you don't need to fix yourself. Maybe you don't need a better morning routine or a new app. Maybe you just need to descend. To stop resisting, to let the old identity collapse, to sit still, until the voice inside you speaks. That's why this video exists. To flip the story, you are not lazy, you are not weak, you are not broken. You are being summoned by something older than your trauma, older than your name, older than society's expectations. You are being called by your own unconscious, and if you answer, you won't come back the same. But that's the point. So I'll ask you again. What if you're not depressed? What if you're finally hearing the voice you've been silencing for years? And what if that voice is you? You think this fog is your failure, that this darkness is a diagnosis, but what if it's a door? The same door Jung walked through. When he gave up everything he thought he knew, his theories, his reputation, even his sanity, and stepped into the unknown. The Red Book wasn't his way out. It was his way in, his attempt to make contact with the unconscious. Not to conquer it, but to listen, to see what was hidden beneath the masks, the roles, the logic. And what he found there was not emptiness, it was meaning. Here's the truth. In today's world, we've sanitized depression, reduced it to serotonin and self-care slogans. But Jung saw something deeper and more terrifying. He said, the sole purpose of human existence is to kindle a light in the darkness of being. He believed the soul doesn't retreat because it's damaged. It retreats because it's been ignored. Ignored by your routines, ignored by your hustle, ignored by the persona you wear like a costume. So when the soul withdrew, Jung didn't chase it with medication or distractions. He followed it into visions, symbols, and madness. The Red Book became a journal of mythic descent. He met serpents, towers, divine mothers, gods of war and ruin. And within that ruin, he found treasure. He called this landscape the collective unconscious, an ancient terrain buried beneath your culture, your ego, your name. And in that depth, he found guides, figures who were not real, but still true. One of them was Philemon, a wise prophetic spirit, a symbol of the inner guide that lives in each of us. But it only speaks when the noise goes silent. Then came the Red One, a darker force, seductive, destructive, a reflection of suppressed desire and shadowed pleasure. Jung didn't fight him, he didn't run, he listened. Because these were not hallucinations, they were pieces of himself, forgotten, buried, rejected. And here's where the truth lands like thunder. Depression, in Jung's vision, is not a sickness to cure. It is a journey to embrace. It is not the end. It is the invitation. It's not just the absence of happiness, it's the invasion of truth. The truth about the friendships you maintained out of fear of loneliness. The dreams you chased that were never really yours to begin with. The identities you slipped into like armor, just to feel protected. Eventually, the soul begins to rebel. But rebellion doesn't always scream. It often goes silent. It arrives quietly, as numbness, as exhaustion, as apathy and disconnection. That's your psyche dimming the noise on the surface because it needs you to descend, to listen deeper. This is why Jung's Red Book matters, not just as history, but as a mirror. Jung stopped treating the unconscious like a flaw to fix. He began to treat it as a language, spoken in dreams, symbols, synchronicities, and moods that logic can't unravel. What we label depression, he called an initiation, a psychic death. And like all deaths, it's raw. It strips you. You lose your drive, your certainty, your circle. You even lose the self you thought you were. But in the quiet beneath the ashes, something sacred begins to stir. A self that isn't a performance. A self that doesn't ask for permission to exist. A self that doesn't shrink to be loved. Let's be honest, this awakening won't look graceful. It often looks like ruin. You might retreat from everyone, cry for no visible reason, feel rage, guilt, shame, even a kind of spiritual nausea. You may stop wanting anything at all. You might even feel dead. But Jung reminds us, there is no coming to consciousness without pain. Because becoming real isn't just a choice, it's a sacred sacrifice. You give up being liked to become whole. You give up being understood to be authentic. You give up comfort for the raw electricity of being alive. Here's the deeper truth. What we call depression is often just the soul undergoing a radical realignment, but society doesn't want that. It wants you numb, distracted, medicated. Because a person who awakens, they can't be sold illusions anymore. They stop chasing hollow love. They begin to walk away. They begin to see. They begin to live on truth, not validation. That's what Jung's Red Book really revealed, not just visions, but a roadmap to freedom. So if you feel like you're unraveling, like your old world is slipping away, like you can't keep up the act anymore, don't panic. You're not broken. You're becoming. You're becoming someone who refuses to die inside just to be accepted. Someone who no longer waits for permission to feel alive. You're not regressing. You're not falling apart. You're waking up in a world that was never built to hold the weight of your realness. And that pain you're feeling? That ache? It's the friction of a vast soul trying to squeeze itself into a life that became too small. But they never tell you what comes after. They talk about healing like it's soft, like it's beautiful. They forget to mention the death before the rebirth. Because when you finally stop pretending, when your soul demands silence, when the world's noise begins to fade, you're left with nothing but yourself. And that silence is deafening. You thought awakening would feel like light, but at first it feels like loss. You lose interest in the very things you used to obsess over. You drift from the people you once shared laughter with. You enter old rooms and feel like a stranger. Even music feels hollow. The ambitions that once drove you now slip through your fingers like ash. You don't know who you are anymore. And that terrifies you. But that disorientation is the beginning of truth. As Jung wrote in the Red Book, enlightenment doesn't come from imagining figures of light, but from making the darkness conscious. And that darkness, it's not out there. It's you. It's all the pieces of you had to bury just to feel safe. So what happens when the soul truly wakes? One by one, the structures start to fall. Your relationships begin to crumble, not loudly, but like bridges finally giving in under a weight they were never built to bear. Conversations feel like performance. You realize you were always the listener, always the healer, always the one who bent too much. And then one day, you stop. You stop sending the first text. You stop laughing to make others comfortable. You stop pretending dead friendships are still alive. And when you do, they'll call you cold. They'll say you've changed. They'll say you've become distant. And they'll be right. You're not the same. You've stopped betraying yourself. You stopped texting first. You stopped texting first. Stopped forcing smiles just to smooth the tension in the room. You stopped twisting your soul into shapes that fit other people's stories. It's not an act of rebellion. It's an act of survival. Of finally choosing to breathe in a space that doesn't suffocate your spirit. You stop answering calls that drain you. Stop explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. Stop showing up to conversations that feel like slow poison, where your silence is the only sacred thing left. You begin to feel like a stranger to the life you once begged to be part of. The laughter once shared now feels mechanical. The warmth you used to fake has gone cold. And yes, they notice. They'll call you cold. They'll say you've changed, that you've built walls, that you've lost your spark. But what they're really saying is you're no longer controllable. You're no longer playing the role. You're no longer sacrificing yourself to keep the peace. And that's true. Because you finally understand. Peace that demands your silence was never peace at all. You grieve the person you used to be. Second, you grieve the person you used to be, and not the way you'd expect. It's not tears every day. It's sudden stillness, a pause in the chest, a haunting nostalgia for an identity you no longer recognize. You miss the one who smiled through pain, not because she was fake, but because she didn't know she was allowed to feel. You miss the one who overachieved, not because she was strong, but because she feared stillness would expose the emptiness beneath the applause. You grieve the mask, not because it was a lie, but because it was protection. And now, bare-faced, you tremble before the world, wondering, who am I if I'm not trying to be enough? It's a strange freedom to walk away from the performative self. But it comes with mourning, not of failure, but of outgrowing who you had to become just to survive. You experience emotional whiplash. Third, you experience emotional whiplash. One moment, peace flows through you like a soft river. The next, a flood of rage crashes in, followed by tears you can't explain. You laugh, and moments later, you fall into silence that tastes like grief. You think, I'm broken. But you're not. You're thawing. The frozen parts of you, the repressed sadness, the denied rage, the silenced longing, are waking up. Your psyche is rearranging itself. Your emotional body is releasing years of compressed pain, all the wounds that went unspoken, all the times you swallowed the ache. And yes, it feels like chaos, but Jung would say this is individuation. The unconscious is rising to meet the conscious, and that union is rarely graceful, but it is sacred. This is not emotional instability. It's emotional liberation. The storm isn't destroying you, it's clearing what no longer belongs. You lose your addiction to external validation. Fourth, you lose your addiction to external validation. Not overnight. It starts slowly, with a quiet no where there used to be eager compliance. You no longer chase likes, no longer wait for the ping of approval to feel alive. You begin to unhook your worth from the eyes of others. You share your truth, and if no one claps, you still feel whole. You show up in rooms, not to impress, but to be. You speak, not to be heard, but because silence has grown heavy. And when they don't understand you, you don't rush to explain. When they walk away, you don't follow. Because you now know your value is not negotiated in the marketplace of opinions. It's inherent. It's sacred. It's yours. You begin to understand what real power feels like. Not loud, not dominant, but still, clear, unshakable. 1903. You become a mirror. Fifth, you become a mirror. Not because you try to be, but because truth, once embodied, reflects everything that isn't. Your presence unsettles. You speak softly, but people hear themselves in your silence. You hold your ground, and they feel the tremble in theirs. People feel judged, even when you say nothing. Because what you no longer tolerate shines a light on what they still cling to. You walk away from drama, and they call you heartless. You stop justifying your boundaries, and they say you've changed. You show up honest, and they shrink from their own dishonesty. It's not personal. You're just reflecting back what they're not ready to see. But that mirror is medicine, and not everyone wants to heal. You'll lose people, but you'll find yourself. And that is a trade your soul will make again and again. 2029. Let's not sugarcoat it. Let's not sugarcoat it. This stage is brutal. It doesn't come with a timeline. No shortcuts. No guarantees. The dark night of the soul can stretch into months, years, lifetimes. But time doesn't matter here. Only truth does. You'll wake up raw, empty, tired, and still. You'll keep going. Because the pain of going back is now greater than the fear of the unknown. You'll stop waiting to be rescued. You'll realize no one's coming. And that realization will shatter you, then shape you. You'll rise, not because you're ready, but because staying down is no longer an option. Fire won't consume you. It will refine you. It will burn away the illusions, leaving only what is real. And when you emerge, you won't be who you were. You won't even recognize the old life. Because this time, you are not building from fear, but from truth. Like death, because it is. It feels like death, because it is. Not of the body, but of an identity, of the mask you wore for years just to feel loved. You're mourning a version of yourself who believed they had to perform to be worthy, who bent, broke, and blurred themselves just to belong. Don't hate them. Don't shame them. Don't mock the one who tried. They were brave in their own way. They survived what you couldn't yet understand. So thank them. Whisper your gratitude like a prayer, and then bury them. Not in bitterness, but in reverence. Not to forget, but to honor. Because that chapter is over, and now you walk forward, lighter, clearer, not because you're healed, but because you're real. Build a new ritual around your silence. 3. Build a new ritual around your silence, not the kind that feels like exile, but the kind that feels like sanctuary. In the Red Book, Jung didn't just think, he listened. He painted not to impress, but to release. He journaled not to record events, but to excavate truths. He walked through nature as though the wind was whispering secrets only the soul could hear. He didn't run from silence, he entered it, treated it as a temple, not a punishment. Now that's your task. Don't scroll past the stillness. Don't numb it. Sit with it. Let the silence speak. It holds the stories your conscious mind never dared to touch. The wounds beneath your perfection, the longing behind your anger, the truth beneath your performance. Silence is not absence. It is presence. so full of truth it echoes like thunder in the cave of your soul. 4. Create a new inner Torah, because when the old world breaks, don't glue the pieces back in the same order. Don't build the same prison and call it home. Build different. Write a new code. Something like, I no longer trade authenticity for acceptance. I no longer chase what leaves me hollow. I protect my peace like it's sacred because it is. I walk away without guilt. I speak what's real, not what's easy. I stop explaining my worth because it is self-evident. I give love, but I never beg for it. Let these words become your new covenant. Etch them into your daily rhythm, because the world outside will try to lure you back into the old spell of seeking, proving, pleasing. But when that happens, your new self will smile softly and firmly and whisper, I don't live there anymore. Transcend the label of depression. 5. Transcend the label of depression. Yes, this is sacred ground. Tread gently, but don't be afraid. You are not your diagnosis. You are not your trauma. You are not a prisoner of your own brain chemistry. That doesn't mean your suffering isn't real. It means it has depth. It has story. It has context. In the Red Book, Jung didn't offer cures. He offered initiation. He saw depression not as a dead end, but a descent. A descent into the soul, into the underworld of everything we buried to survive. And descent is sacred, because it prepares the womb for rebirth. Stop trying to go back to who you were before the darkness came. That person was a costume, a placeholder, a survival strategy. This new path is forged in fire, but not out of fear, out of clarity. You say no now, not because you're bitter, but because you know your limit. You rest now not out of laziness, but because you finally value your life force. You stop performing for love. You let your silence speak louder than your need. You remember you were whole before they clapped. You were real before they approved. This isn't reinvention, it's remembrance. This isn't becoming someone new. It's the sacred art of shedding what was never truly you. 2735. That's what Jung did. That's what Jung did. He descended into madness, into dreams, into archetypes and visions too wild for the rational world. He didn't run. He stayed. He wrestled angels and shadows. He documented what he saw, not to impress, but to survive. And when he returned from that inner hell, he didn't just create theories. He transformed psychology. He shifted humanity's understanding of the soul. Because he faced what most men flee from, himself. You have that same power, but not through force, not through hustle, through surrender. By sitting in your own fire long enough to understand, you were never broken. You were buried. And now you rise. Not perfectly, but truthfully. Not with performance, but with presence. You'll lose people. Let them go. You'll lose people. Let them go. You'll question your worth. Keep walking. You'll feel loneliness like a ghost in your chest, but in that ache, you'll meet the only person who truly matters. You. The one who didn't abandon herself. The one who stayed in the storm. Who sat with the shadows when no one else could. Who kept breathing even when the air was made of sorrow. And once you've seen truth, you'll never trade it for comfort again. You are not depressed. You are remembering who you are. So here it is, the final echo. The truth that lives in every soul, brave enough to descend and return. You are not depressed. You are remembering who you are. And no, you're not done. You're just getting started.